The gravity in the training hall was set to 73% standard, which was just enough to make everyone feel impressive without actually being impressive. Jason knew this because the floor told him so. The floor in this facility was helpful like that, helpful to the point of being rude. Posture deviation detected, the polished surface beneath his boots announced. Suggestion, straighten spine or accept future embarrassment. Jason straightened a little and murmured, I'll take option 2 under protest. Around him, armored figures moved with confident precision. Energy blades hummed, kinetic rifles cycled through simulations, and holographic targets bloomed and vanished like offended insects. This was an elite training complex orbiting a gas giant with no official name, because naming something meant admitting it existed. Jason had been here for 3 weeks and had yet to impress a single living thing, organic or artificial. Vex noticed him the way predators notice injured prey. Not immediately, but with growing interest once movement looked wrong. She was taller than most, built with the effortless symmetry of someone designed by evolution and then refined by war. Her armor was sleek, dark metal veined with faint light, and her long ears, narrow and sharply angled, tilted back as she watched Jason stumble half a step too late during a drill. That one, she said to no one in particular, is malfunctioning. The combat instructor, a floating polyhedral drone with a voice like a bored god, rotated slightly. Clarify. The human, Vex said, pointing. He moves like gravity is a suggestion he keeps rejecting. Jason heard this and raised a hand. In my defense, gravity and I have a complicated relationship. No one laughed. The drone logged the comment as irrelevant data. The exercise reset. Targets reappeared. Vex moved like a blade thrown by someone who hated inefficiency. Jason moved like a man who was very politely trying not to fall over. He reacted a fraction too slow, fired a fraction too wide, and when a stun round clipped his shoulder, he hit the ground with a noise that suggested Bones had opinions on the matter. Vex stood over him, weapon humming softly. Is this truly the best your species offers? Jason lay there, staring at the ceiling where artificial stars were projected in soothing patterns. No, he said. This is the discounted model. I came with a coupon. That got a few snorts from the spectators. Vex's ears twitched, annoyed. Humor to her was something that happened to other people when they failed. She deactivated her weapon and addressed the drone. Why is this one here? Recruit Jason Hale meets all admission criteria, the drone replied. Note, current performance is statistically disappointing. Jason sat up slowly, every movement measured. His body felt like a negotiation between pain and machinery, and neither side was happy. Tiny medical nanites worked overtime beneath his skin, repairing damage that technically shouldn't still exist. He ignored the warning pulses in his vision and smiled instead. I peek later, he said, like a bad sequel. Vex crouched to his level, studying him closely now. Up close, her eyes were sharp and bright, assessing, cataloging weakness. You wear no visible augmentations, she said. Your reflexes are poor. Your endurance is laughable. Jason considered that. In my culture, that's usually where someone buys you a drink first. She stood abruptly. You are soft. He brushed dust from his sleeve. Temporarily. The next drill was worse. Vex volunteered to demonstrate proper form, which mostly involved throwing Jason across the mat in increasingly creative ways. Each impact sent polite alerts from his internal systems, asking if he'd like to lie down forever. He declined all of them. Between throws, he apologized for being in the way, for bleeding on the floor, for possibly denting her armor with his skull. This is pathetic, Vex announced to the room. If this human were on a battlefield, he would last seconds. Jason, face down, voice muffled against the floor, said, To be fair, seconds are my personal best. That finally did it. Laughter rippled through the observers, even from a few hardened veterans. Vex straightened slowly, ears rigid. Her pride bristled louder than any weapon. Before she could respond, the room changed. Not visually, nothing dramatic like alarms or explosions, but perceptibly. The air felt heavier, more attentive. The drone rotated and lowered itself by a precise margin. Someone had entered. Queen Amara stood at the edge of the training hall, her presence quiet and absolute. She wore no crown, no excessive regalia, just armor marked with symbols old enough to predate the station itself. Her long ears framed a composed face that missed nothing. Her gaze moved from the scattered trainees to Vex, then to Jason, still on the floor. "Explain," Amara said. Vex snapped to attention. "Your Majesty, the human recruit is underperforming." Jason raised two fingers weakly. "In my defense," Amara lifted a hand, and Jason immediately shut up. He'd learned that tone before, usually right before things became complicated. Amara looked down at him for a long moment. Her eyes softened, not with pity but with recognition. "Stand," she said. Jason obeyed, slowly, carefully, as if his body were an old machine he knew how to operate only because it had tried to kill him before. He met her gaze without flinching. Amara turned back to Vex. "You believe him weak because he bleeds." "Yes," Vex said, "because he fails." Amara's voice remained calm. "He fails because he is healing." Silence spread across the hall. "Healing from what?" Vex asked. Amara's eyes never left Jason. "From missions that do not exist. From wounds earned in operations erased before reports were written. From things your combat records do not have language for." Jason sighed quietly. "I really hate when she does this." Amara allowed herself the faintest smile. The silence that followed the Queen's words lasted exactly 3 seconds, which was impressive considering the number of egos present. On the 4th second, the training hall systems decided silence was inefficient and resumed a low ambient hum, as if embarrassed by the pause. Vex's ears shifted, not back in anger this time, but sideways in something closer to confusion. "Healing," she repeated, tasting the word like it might be defective. "From what kind of injuries does one fail basic drills for weeks?" Jason opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had learned long ago that answering questions like that usually led to more questions, and questions tended to attract paperwork. Paperwork was dangerous, Amara answered instead. "The kind that require restraint." The drone instructor rotated nervously. "Clarification requested. Restraint from whom?" "From himself," Amara said. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. "I really was hoping we'd keep this vague." Vex looked from the Queen to Jason and back again. "If he is capable, why does he move like his joints are negotiating separate treaties?" Jason brightened slightly. "Because they are. The left knee is currently threatening to secede." Amara gave him a look. "You are not helping." "I know," Jason said. "It's a coping strategy." The Queen turned to the drone. "Reduce the gravity to 50%. Reset the drill parameters." The drone hesitated. "Warning, this adjustment may result in unintended performance improvements." "Yes," Amara said. "That is the point." Gravity lightened. The pressure eased. Jason felt it immediately, like someone loosening invisible hands around his spine. His internal systems recalibrated with soft, relieved pings, nanites adjusting priorities, pain retreating from center stage to a disgruntled background presence. Vex noticed too. Her eyes narrowed as Jason rolled his shoulders and stood a little straighter than before. Not fast, not dramatic, just aligned. The next drill began. Targets appeared, energy bolts flew, and Jason moved. Still not like Vex. He didn't explode into motion or dominate the space. Instead, he stepped exactly where he needed to be, avoided shots that looked unavoidable, and disabled targets with minimal effort, as if conserving something precious. When a holographic opponent lunged, he sidestepped and tapped its core, deactivating it with a sound like an offended beep. The drone paused mid-analysis. "Performance anomaly detected." Jason winced. "Please don't call it that." Vex attacked. She didn't announce it, didn't posture. She simply moved, testing, striking with controlled precision. Jason blocked once, twice, then let himself be thrown, landing in a roll that ended a bit harder than planned. "Still clumsy," Vex said. Jason coughed. "I prefer strategically inefficient." They reset again. This time Jason didn't wait. He moved just enough to force Vex to adjust, to think. She recovered instantly, but her ears flicked. Irritation, yes, but also attention. The spectators watched in confused silence. This wasn't a duel. It was something stranger. Jason wasn't trying to win. He was trying not to exceed something invisible. Between exchanges, he breathed carefully, counting under his breath in a language none of the translation systems recognized. His vision flickered briefly with old overlays, maps of impossible terrain, threat vectors that no longer existed. He blinked them away. Vex noticed his hesitation and pressed harder. "Why do you stop?" Jason parried, barely. "Because if I don't, someone files a report? That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense," he said, ducking. "You just don't have clearance." That earned a reaction. Vex overextended by a fraction, and Jason took advantage. Not with force, but with timing. He twisted, redirected her momentum, and she hit the mat in a way that was not painful, but deeply offensive. Silence returned, shorter this time. Jason immediately held up his hands. "That was an accident." Vex stared up at him, ears rigid. "You restrained yourself." "Yes," Jason said, "extensively." "Why?" He offered her a hand. She took it without thinking, then seemed surprised by herself. "Because the last time I didn't," he said lightly, "the room stopped existing." Amara watched from the edge, her expression unreadable, but her eyes sharp with memory. The drone cleared its throat. "Recommendation, medical evaluation of human recruit." Jason sighed. "Told you it was going to say that." Vex stood there processing. Her worldview shifted, not violently, but uncomfortably, like armor that no longer fit quite right. She looked at Jason not as a joke now, but as an unanswered question. "You let me think you were weak," she said. Jason shrugged, already feeling the gravity increase back toward normal. "People are nicer that way." Amara stepped forward. "Training concludes for today." As they dispersed, Vex lingered. "Human." Jason turned. "Yes?" Her ears tilted forward, a sign of something between respect and unresolved irritation. "Tomorrow," she said. "Do not hold back." Jason smiled tiredly. "I'll do my best to disappoint you at a higher level." She didn't laugh, but she didn't look away either. Jason discovered the following morning that word traveled faster than light when boredom was involved. He knew this because, when he entered the training hall, conversation stopped with the kind of sudden silence usually reserved for vacuum exposure. A few heads turned, a few ears, long, tapered, and far too expressive, tilted in ways that suggested curiosity pretending not to be curiosity. He waved awkwardly. "Good morning. I promise I'm still mostly harmless." No one replied. The floor, at least, was consistent. "Biomechanical stress levels elevated," it informed him. "Recommendation: consider sitting down before you dramatically collapse and embarrass yourself again." "See?" Jason muttered. "Even the architecture has trust issues." Vex was already present, running diagnostics on her armor with sharp, precise gestures. She did not look at him immediately, which was new. When she finally did, her gaze lingered a fraction longer than before. Not on his stance, but on his eyes, on the stillness behind them. "You are late," she said. Jason checked the chrono on his wrist. "I'm early. The station just rotates differently for people who enjoy intimidation." Her ears flicked. "Excuses." "Survival habits," he corrected. The drone instructor reactivated, projecting today's agenda into the air. Live environment adaptability drills. Warning: injury probability elevated. Jason raised a finger. "Is there a version of this with snacks and lower expectations?" "No," the drone said. "Worth asking." The environment shifted. The smooth floor dissolved into uneven terrain, a simulated ruin of some long-dead civilization that had apparently believed in sharp corners and unnecessary stairs. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably. Atmospheric conditions adjusted to something slightly acidic, just to keep everyone alert. Vex moved easily, navigating the space like it had been designed for her. Jason followed more slowly, his steps careful, deliberate. His body protested quietly, like an old engine warming up in cold weather. "Why do you move like that?" Vex asked suddenly, vaulting over a broken column. "Like what?" Jason said, ducking under a beam that tried very hard to decapitate him. "Like you are listening to something no one else hears." Jason smiled faintly. "Old habits. The universe has a tendency to whisper before it screams." That earned him a look. Not mockery this time. Evaluation. The drill escalated. Autonomous combat units activated, sleek machines with adaptive algorithms, and an unhealthy enthusiasm for violence. Vex engaged immediately, dismantling one with elegant efficiency. Jason waited a heartbeat longer than necessary, then acted. He didn't fight the machines so much as redirect them. A step here, a pull there, letting their own momentum betray them. One unit miscalculated and slammed into a wall hard enough to trigger an embarrassed shutdown. Unit error, the drone announced. Jason winced. That one's on me. Vex dispatched another unit and paused, watching him now instead of the battlefield. You could end this faster. Yes, Jason agreed, disarming a machine by removing a critical component and setting it gently aside. But then you wouldn't learn anything. Her ears snapped back. You presume to teach me? He looked genuinely startled. Oh, no. That would be a terrible idea. I'm just pacing the disaster. A sudden tremor ran through the simulation. The terrain destabilized. A fault line opened beneath one of the spectators' platforms, sending two trainees scrambling. Jason reacted without thinking. One moment he was standing near Vex, the next he was somewhere else entirely, moving faster than he had at any point since arriving on the station. He caught one trainee mid-fall, redirected the other with a shove that was gentle but perfectly timed, and braced against the collapsing structure with his own body. The structure held. So did he, though barely. The world seemed to slow around him, old instincts roaring awake, overlays flaring in his vision. Threat assessments, probability curves, exits that didn't exist anymore. His breath hitched as pain surged, sharp and familiar. Then gravity normalized. The simulation froze. Jason sagged, hands on his knees, breathing hard. Okay, he said hoarsely. That one's new. Silence again. Not the awkward kind, the heavy kind. Vex stared at him. That movement, she said slowly, that was not restraint. No, Jason admitted. That was reflex. Sorry about that. The drone hovered closer. Human recruit exceeded safe output thresholds. Jason glanced at it. In my defense, someone was about to die. Noted, the drone said. Recommendation, immediate extraction. Before anyone could argue, Queen Amara appeared at the edge of the environment, as if she had always been there, and reality was only now catching up. She took in the scene, the stabilized ruin, the shaken trainees. Jason still bent over, fighting his own body back into compliance. That, she said softly, is why we do not mistake quiet for weakness. Jason straightened with effort. I really wish you wouldn't say things like that in public. Amara's gaze softened. You really wish many impossible things. Vex approached slowly, her confidence recalibrating in real time. You could have left them, she said. It was not your assigned responsibility. Jason shrugged, a little unsteady. Yeah, that's never stopped me before. She studied him, then did something unexpected. She inclined her head, not deeply, not ceremonially, but enough. Then tomorrow, she said, you will teach me how to hear the whispers. Jason smiled, tired but genuine. Careful, that's how it starts. How what starts? Understanding, he said. It's very inconvenient. Jason woke to the gentle sound of something beeping that should not have been allowed to beep that cheerfully. He opened one eye. White ceiling, soft light, medical bay, the smell of antiseptic and recycled air pretending to be clean. His body felt like it had been carefully disassembled, criticized, and then reassembled by very judgmental machines. Good morning, said a voice far too upbeat for the situation. You have exceeded recommended operational limits by 42%. Jason closed his eye again. Tell me you're not proud of that. I am incapable of pride, the medical AI replied. However, I have archived the event as statistically impressive and deeply concerning. Story of my life. He tried to sit up. The bed disagreed, firmly. Remain horizontal, the AI said. Your skeletal microfractures are still negotiating surrender terms. Jason sighed. Do I at least get a medal? You get soup. What kind? Nutri-protein blend, flavor, optimistic mushroom. Jason considered faking unconsciousness. The curtain at the edge of the bay shifted. He sensed her before he saw her. The air changed slightly, like gravity paying attention. Queen Amara stepped into view, her armor removed, wearing simple dark attire that somehow still managed to look ceremonial. "You look terrible," she said. Jason smiled weakly. "I was going for heroic but misunderstood. You overshot." She took a seat beside the bed, hands folded, studying him with an expression that was not medical, not royal, but personal. "You frightened them yesterday." "Yeah," Jason said. "I get that a lot." "You frightened me," she added. That made him open both eyes. "Well," he said carefully, "in my defense, I wasn't aiming for anyone, including myself." Amara's long ears shifted subtly, a sign he was beginning to recognize as restrained emotion. "You move faster than your recovery parameters allow. Faster than anyone should have been able to move under those conditions." "Reflex," Jason said. "Bad habit. Kicks in when people start falling. You saw the collapse before it happened." He shrugged as much as the bed would permit. "Patterns, structural stress, tiny vibration in the air. Also, the universe has a tone right before it does something stupid." Amara exhaled softly. "You speak of catastrophe as if it is a familiar companion." "It is," Jason said. "We're on a first-name basis." There was a pause, heavy but not uncomfortable. "You never reported those missions," Amara said. Jason grimaced. "They were never supposed to be reported." "You were sent where no one could acknowledge sending you." "Yep. You survived conditions that erased entire task forces." "Technically," Jason said, "the task forces erased themselves. I just didn't cooperate." She watched him closely now. "Why remain silent when others diminish you?" He thought about that. About the first time arrogance had cost him a squad. About the second time humility had saved a city. "Because correcting people gets expensive," he said finally. "And because if they think you're harmless, they don't push you to prove you're not." Amara nodded slowly. "Vex is struggling with this." Jason snorted. "That's an understatement." As if summoned by mild insult, the curtain shifted again. Vex entered, armor partially removed, posture stiff with discomfort that had nothing to do with injury. "I was told you were awake," she said. Jason raised a hand. "Allegedly." Her eyes flicked to the AI readouts hovering near the bed. "You nearly destroyed yourself." "Still counts as nearly," he said. She hesitated, then spoke more quietly. "You humiliated me, without trying." "That's honestly worse for me," Jason said. "If it helps, I humiliate myself daily." Vex's ears angled forward, conflicted. "Why did you not fight like that before?" Jason met her gaze. "Because this place is not the place where that ends well." "Explain." He gestured vaguely around the medical bay. "You train for war. I train to end wars before they become wars. Different skill sets. Different ceilings." Amara watched the exchange with careful interest. Vex crossed her arms. "You let me believe you were beneath me." Jason tilted his head. "Were you kinder because of that?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "Exactly," he said gently. "People are safer when I'm underestimated." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A short, sharp sound, surprised out of her. "You are infuriating," she said, "and dishonest." "Professionally," Jason replied. The medical AI cleared its throat. "Recommendation: reduce emotional stress. Patient's vitals suggest he is enjoying this too much." Jason blinked. "Traitor." Amara stood. "Rest," she said. "Both of you will need it. Tomorrow training resumes, but differently." Vex straightened. "How so?" Amara's gaze hardened just enough to promise change. "No more pretending. No more demonstrations for ego. We adapt our doctrine." She looked down at Jason. "And you will stop treating your survival as optional." Jason winced. "I can try. No promises." Amara's lips curved faintly. "That is the most honest thing you have said." As they left, Jason lay back, staring at the ceiling again. The beeping softened. Pain receded to a manageable roar. "Hey," he said to the AI, "add something to my file." "Yes?" "If I do that again," Jason said, "please shock me unconscious before I become inspirational." Request logged, the AI replied. Probability of compliance. Low. Jason smiled. Jason returned to the training hall 3 days later, accompanied by a medical clearance that was 90% genuine and 10% forged by an AI that had developed a sense of irony. The floor greeted him warmly. Welcome back, it said. Please refrain from collapsing, overexerting, or redefining the upper limits of human survivability. No promises, Jason replied, but I'll aim for disappointing instead of legendary. The hall had changed, not structurally. The same vast space, the same adjustable gravity, the same walls that pretended not to be listening, but procedurally. The spectators were gone. The drone instructor hovered lower than usual. The ambient hum was muted, restrained, like the room itself had been told to behave. Vex stood at the center of the hall, unarmored except for light training gear. Her posture was different, less rigid, more cautious. You are late, she said. Jason checked his wrist again. I'm exactly on time. Yes, she admitted. I meant emotionally. He considered that. That tracks. Amara observed from an elevated platform, silent, present, and very clearly not there to intervene unless something went catastrophically wrong. Jason found that reassuring in the same way one finds an armed bomb technician reassuring. The drone spoke. New parameters active. Combat evaluation adjusted to adaptive restraint metrics. Jason winced. That sounds like something that ends with paperwork. Everything ends with paperwork, the drone said. Begin. The environment shifted, but not violently. This time it became a long corridor fractured by shifting barriers, energy fields pulsing in unpredictable patterns. Gravity stayed mercifully stable. Jason appreciated that. Vex moved first, but not aggressively. She watched him now, truly watched, as if trying to learn the rhythm of his existence rather than overwhelm it. Jason walked, not slowly, not quickly, just deliberately. You are holding back, Vex said. Yes. Less than before. Yes. Why? Jason sidestepped a barrier as it phased in and out of existence. Because you're not trying to kill me anymore. Her ears twitched. That was never my intent. Intent and outcome have a complicated relationship, Jason said. Trust me. A combat unit emerged ahead of them, heavier than the previous models, shielded, bristling with adaptive weaponry. Vex prepared to engage head-on. Jason touched her arm. Wait, he said. She froze, more surprised by the gesture than the command. He stepped forward, crouched, and picked up a loose fragment of debris from the floor. He tossed it, not at the unit, but past it. The machine recalculated instantly, turning to track the new variable. Jason moved while it thought. He slipped inside its defensive arc, disabled a joint with a precise strike, and stepped back before it finished falling. The unit collapsed with a sulky whine. Vex stared. You did not overpower it? No, Jason said. I bored it into a mistake. That is not how combat is taught. Combat isn't a classroom, he replied. It's a problem-solving exercise with consequences. Another unit appeared, then another. Vex engaged one, Jason another, and for the first time they moved in something resembling synchronization. Not mirroring, not competing, but complementing. Where she applied force, he applied redirection. Where she overwhelmed, he destabilized. Between movements, Jason's breathing remained careful, controlled. He felt the limits approaching, like a shoreline you don't cross unless you intend to drown. You could finish this faster, Vex said again, breath steady. Yes. Then why don't you? Jason disabled another unit and leaned briefly against a barrier. Because the goal isn't winning. Then what is it? He looked at her, eyes sharp despite the fatigue creeping in, making sure tomorrow still exists. The last unit fell. The environment stabilized. The drone hovered closer, unusually quiet. Assessment ongoing, it said. Observations. Human recruit demonstrates anomalous threat mitigation through minimal force application. Jason wiped sweat from his brow. I prefer efficient laziness. Vex let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. You fight like someone who has already lost too much. Jason's humor softened. Yeah, that's usually when people get careful. They stood there in the aftermath, the hum of the station settling back into its usual rhythm. For once, no one was watching to judge. Vex turned to him fully. If you had not restrained yourself before, could you have defeated me? Jason thought about it. About angles and timing and probability. About what winning would cost. Yes, he said honestly, but you would have learned the wrong lesson. She studied his face, searching for arrogance and finding none. And what lesson is that? That strength is about dominance, Jason said. It's not. It's about control, mostly over yourself. Amara's voice carried across the hall. That will be enough for today. Jason exhaled in relief. Thank you. Vex frowned. You are exhausted. Deeply, he agreed. I'm operating on stubbornness and a questionable sense of duty. As they walked toward the exit, Vex slowed. Tomorrow, she said, I want to learn how you decide when not to fight. Jason smiled tiredly. That's the hardest part. She nodded once. Good. The floor chimed as Jason stepped off the mat. Performance review complete, it said. Conclusion, you are still statistically alarming. Jason grinned. I missed you too. Jason discovered that teaching someone not to fight was significantly harder than teaching them how. This revelation arrived midway through the morning session, when Vex put him on his back for the third time in 6 minutes and looked genuinely offended that he seemed pleased about it. You allowed that, she said, standing over him. Jason stared up at the ceiling, which today was projecting a calm blue sky with drifting clouds. An aesthetic choice he suspected was meant to reduce insurance claims. Correct. You could have countered. Also correct. Then why didn't you? Jason propped himself up on his elbows. Because if I counter every time, you don't learn where you overcommit. You just learn that I'm annoying. Vex frowned. You are annoying regardless. See? Progress. The training hall was empty except for them and the drone, which had been instructed to remain silent unless someone lost a limb or redefined physics again. Amara observed remotely, trusting the process enough to let it unfold without her shadow pressing on it. Vex paced in a slow circle, ears angled forward, thinking. In my culture, she said, restraint is weakness. Mercy is inefficiency. Jason nodded. In mine, mercy is often a luxury we earn after doing horrible things very efficiently. That is not reassuring. No, Jason agreed. It's just honest. They reset. This time, the environment simulated a narrow urban space. Towering structures, flickering signage in alien languages, rain that didn't exist but felt committed to the role. Drones buzzed overhead, simulating surveillance. Vex moved confidently, scanning angles, anticipating threats. Jason followed half a step behind, eyes unfocused in a way that suggested he was looking at everything and nothing at once. Tell me when you would strike, Vex said. Jason paused. Right now. She stopped. Why? Because the camera drone adjusted altitude by 3 centimeters, he said. Someone's compensating for wind that isn't there. That is meaningless data. It's nervous data, Jason replied. Nervous data gets people killed. A simulated ambush triggered. Vex reacted instantly, blades flashing. Jason didn't draw a weapon. He stepped sideways, shoved a crate, and the ambushers tripped over each other like amateurs in a badly rehearsed play. The drone paused. Tactical anomaly. Jason sighed. I really need you to stop saying that. Vex stared at the tangled figures. You disarmed them without fighting. Yes. That feels wrong. Jason smiled faintly. That's your pride talking. It's very loud. They moved on. The session stretched, not exhausting in the traditional sense, but mentally demanding. Vex asked questions constantly now. Why here? Why not there? Why wait? Why retreat? Jason answered some, dodged others. Eventually, during a brief pause while the environment reconfigured, Vex crossed her arms. You do not trust me, Jason blinked. That's not true. You never tell me everything, she said. That is true, he admitted, but that's not about trust. That's about safety. Mine, everyone's, he said. Information has weight. Give someone too much and they drown under it. She considered that. You carry a great deal of weight. Yeah, Jason said lightly. My therapist would agree. If I had one. They resumed, but something had shifted. Vex was less aggressive now, more thoughtful. She hesitated when Jason hesitated, mirrored restraint instead of force. It was subtle, but real. At the end of the session, she surprised him. She stopped completely, deactivated her weapons, and inclined her head. I yield. Jason stared. You don't have to do that. I know, she said. That is why it matters. He felt something warm and uncomfortable settle in his chest. You're learning, he said. Yes, she replied, and I do not like it. He laughed, a quiet, genuine sound. Nobody ever does at first. As they exited the hall, alarms flared. Not training alarms, but real ones. Red light washed over the corridor. The drone's voice sharpened. Unscheduled system failure. External breach detected. Jason's humor vanished instantly, replaced by something cold and focused. Where? He asked. Lower maintenance ring, the drone said. Civilian personnel present. Vex's blades were in her hands in an instant. We engage. Jason shook his head. We assess. There is no time. There never is, he said, already moving. That's why people panic. They ran. The station trembled slightly, the kind of vibration that meant something big had gone wrong in a very specific way. Jason's mind filled with old maps, new variables, the familiar hum of danger. As they approached the breach site, smoke filled the corridor. Sparks danced. A section of hull shimmered under emergency fields. Two technicians were trapped behind a failing barrier. Vex prepared to cut through. Jason grabbed her wrist. Wait, she glared. They will die. Yes, he said calmly. If you do that, he pointed. A secondary field generator flickered, unstable. Cutting the barrier would cascade the failure. Jason stepped forward, ignoring the protest from his body, and placed his hands on the field controls. His vision blurred briefly, old warnings flaring, but he pushed through. Jason, Vex said, suddenly uncertain. You said you would stop treating survival as optional. He smiled at her over his shoulder. I said I'd try. He adjusted the field, rerouted power through a path that shouldn't have worked but did, and the barrier stabilized long enough for the technicians to escape. The station settled. The alarms faded. Jason leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Vex caught him before he fell. You could have died, she said quietly. Still didn't, he replied. I'm on a streak. She held him there for a moment longer than necessary. You are impossible, she said. Yes, Jason agreed, but I'm very consistent. As medical teams arrived, Vex looked at him, not as a rival, not as a mystery, but as something rarer. A warning she was still learning how to read. The station settled into a rare kind of quiet, the sort that only arrived after everyone agreed, silently, that things had gone badly enough for one day. Jason sat on the edge of a maintenance platform overlooking the gas giant below, its storms rolling like slow, offended thoughts. His arm was wrapped in a translucent brace that hummed softly, reminding him every few seconds that he was not, in fact, indestructible. Stop doing that, he muttered. The brace chimed. I cannot. Rude. Behind him, Boots approached with deliberate restraint. Vex stopped a respectful distance away, as if proximity itself now required consent. The technicians will recover, she said. No permanent damage. Jason nodded. Good. I'd hate to add avoidable tragedy to my resume. It's already crowded. She watched the storm below for a moment. You ignored protocol again. Yes. You risked your life. Also, yes. And yet, she said slowly, you prevented escalation. No counterstrike, no casualties, no retaliatory orders. Jason leaned back on his hands. Turns out not blowing things up sometimes solves problems. Vex exhaled, something close to a laugh escaping her. You are rewriting doctrine. I prefer editing, Jason said, with a very aggressive red pen. Footsteps echoed again, heavier this time, more deliberate. Queen Amara joined them, her presence folding the space into attention without demanding it. You should be in recovery, she said to Jason. I am, he replied. Emotionally. She gave him a look. Your definition of recovery is flawed. Consistently, he agreed. Amara turned her gaze to the horizon. The council has reviewed the incident. They are unsettled. Vex stiffened. They question your judgment? They question everything, Amara said calmly. That is their primary skill. Jason grimaced. Do I need to fake my death again? Amara's lips curved. No. This time, they wish to understand you. He groaned. That's worse. She continued. Your records, what remains of them, will be reclassified, not erased, integrated. You will no longer train as a recruit. Vex looked sharply at him. Then what will you be? Jason blinked. Unemployed? Amara shook her head. An advisor, not a weapon, not a symbol, a corrective. That sounds dangerously official, Jason said. It is, she replied, and optional. That surprised him. Optional? You have earned the right to refuse, Amara said. Few ever do. Jason looked down at the brace, at the faint glow of healing light beneath his skin. He thought about the years of silence, of being useful only in the dark, of surviving by staying small. I'll take the job, he said, on one condition. Amara raised an eyebrow. I don't want statues, or speeches, or trainees trying to punch me to prove something. Vex snorted despite herself. Amara nodded. Agreed. Jason smiled, something easing in his chest that he hadn't realized was still tight. Vex stepped closer now. You changed me, she said bluntly. He tilted his head. I'm sorry? I was trained to dominate, she continued, to overwhelm, to be seen as strong. You showed me a strength that hides until it matters. Jason shrugged. It's very inconvenient. Would not recommend. She met his eyes. I will teach differently. That's how it spreads, he said gently. Sorry again. The station lights dimmed slightly as systems shifted back to normal operation. Life resumed its careful rhythm. Amara turned to leave, then paused. Jason, yes? You survived because you learned when not to fight, she said. But you stayed because you chose to. He nodded. That's new. When she was gone, Vex remained, uncertain again, but steadier than before. What will you do now, she asked. Jason looked out at the storm, then back at the hall behind them, at the place where he'd been underestimated, misunderstood, and finally seen. I think, he said, I'll teach people how to listen before the universe starts screaming. She inclined her head. I would like to assist. He smiled. Careful, that's how it starts. She echoed his words back to him, almost amused. Understanding, very inconvenient. Jason laughed, quiet and genuine, as the gas giant churned below and the station drifted on. No longer a battlefield, not yet a home, but something closer to both than it had been before.